Jurors are not on here, Judge.
Okay. Mr. Martinez, any issues?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Parents?
We spoke with Ms. Stoller.
On the record, off the record?
You can start off the record.
All right.
She said that absolutely they could get that to us. She can't because she's retired.
So is it on its way? Do I need to order something?
I don't know.
All right. Elba? Records reflect the presence of Mr. Chrisman. Counsel, the jurors are not yet present. Mr. Merens.
When we spoke to Ms. Stoller, she said that the e-data was absolutely available. She's retired, so she can't provide it to us, but she gave Mr. Martinez and I the names of the head of the lab, that these files, these electronic data files, could be downloaded on a CD or some other fashion if they wanted to use it, and get us to us. She'd indicate that there would be no problem at all in getting it to us.
You don't have them now, and you're asking for them now?
I don't have them now, and Mr. Martinez had made no indication that he was planning on getting them to me, but he didn't say he wouldn't.
Mr. Martinez.
Ms. Stoller was asked about it, and she said that she didn't have control over them, and that the person that I needed to speak to was Kevin Knapp. I will call him tomorrow when we get out of court and ask him to get it to me. There's nothing else I can do.
Either under 15.1 as part of her report or 15.1G, the court would grant the defense request for the e-data that related to Ms. Stoller's opinion, especially on if there's a lot on prioritizing related to the barrel of the gun.
And we have filed during the lunch hour a motion to preclude any testimony of inconclusive DNA results, which would be heard before Ms. Stoller testifies, and certainly we would like to have complete discovery before she testifies.
You just filed it. I'll give Mr. Martinez a chance to look at it before I do anything. If there's an agreement, I don't need to do anything.
I'm not in agreement, and I'd like 5 days to respond to it.
Okay. The normal timetable is 7 days, but in light of the fact that when is Ms. Stoller likely to be on the stand?
She'll be on today.
Well, then you
or if it goes long, she'll be on Thursday.
Okay. Well, if it's today, I'll allow Mr. Merens to delay his cross, so he doesn't do any cross today until we resolve the motion.
Well, it's going to be the direct, but he's allowed. We have asked that she not be allowed to testify, and this she can testify about all the other things. Hope the court understands. We're not asking her to be precluded in any other item or area. It's just this area that she not be allowed to testify on.
We have Ms. Esprin on the stand now. Is Ms. Stoller your next witness?
No.
All right. We'll have the break in the meeting. In the meantime, I'll ask somebody to print up the motion so I know what the motion. I haven't seen the motion. Mr. Merens, are you otherwise set up ready for Ms. Esprin?
I am, Your Honor.
Jurors are ready. We're ready. Say again? Mr. Gann, you would email that to Barbara McDonald. She can print it here. You have another, if you can, she doesn't have it in her system yet, but if you just email it to her directly, she can get it.
If I could also get it emailed so I could look at it.
Yes. Okay. Ms. Esprin? I have to look mine up. Please be seated. Dr. President, Mr. Chrisman, counsel, and the jurors. Ms. Esprin is still on the stand, still under oath, now beginning cross-examination. Mr. Merritz.
Good afternoon, Ms. Esprin.
Hello.
I believe you indicated you arrived there about 1:30 on October 5th.
Yes.
And you took some initial photographs, Exhibit 7 being one of them. Right. This is a photograph of trailer 51 with a police officer standing there on the porch.
Yes, it is.
And that was taken about 3:03. Then you said you didn't do anything further as far as photographs until about 7 p.m. Is that correct?
No, sir, I did take photos of Officer Vigillo
Ah, okay. And where were they taken?
in the mobile command van.
All right. Other than those photos of Officer Virgilio, between this 3 o'clock photo that I showed you and the approximate 7 p.m. photos, did you take any other photos?
No.
Now, I think we've got testimony that the warrant was signed about 4:21 p.m.
Okay.
So you took no photos, assuming that that's the testimony, you took no other photos between 4:21 and about 7 p.m., correct?
No, I did not.
Okay. Now, did I understand correctly that you take an initial set of photos and then and nothing's disturbed, correct?
Correct.
And then placards are put down and still nothing is disturbed.
Correct.
And these placards are numbered and there to determine different pieces of evidence that the officers plan to seize.
Yes.
And you then, part of your job is to take pictures of these placards and the scene where the placard is, right?
Yes.
And so until the placards are placed on these different pieces of evidence, am I correct in saying that the evidence and the scene is not to be disturbed?
Correct.
So I show you what's been marked as exhibit. Oh, I'm sorry. This one is not an evidence. May I approach?
Yes.
Let me show you what's marked as exhibit 220. I'm sorry, 320, and ask you if you can recognize that as.
Yes, I do.
I move for the addition of 323.
No objection.
323 is admitted, may be published.
We've seen. We've seen this before, this area before. You testified on direct. You thought that was some kind of a bag with a butterfly in it.
Yes.
And that's a placard 16, correct?
Correct.
All right. Now, let me show you what's been marked as exhibit. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me go back and get the time of it. The back of that exhibit 323 is at 1:10:36 a.m.
Correct.
Okay. Now let's look at exhibit 41. And this is the back of that exhibit. This is in evidence, and it shows this was probably one of the first photographs you took starting at about the 7 p.m. time.
Okay, yes.
And exhibit 41 was taken at 7:04:52 p.m., right?
Correct.
And we have here the front door. Do we have those lights?
Yes.
Dim just a little. And we see this same bag that we saw in the previous photograph, right?
Correct.
But it's not in the same place.
No, it's not.
And this was taken at about 7 o'clock, so clearly it had been moved, right?
Yes.
And you mentioned that you didn't think things had been disturbed in this trailer. Told Mr. Martinez that in response to his questions. Do you recall that this morning?
I said it appeared less, it didn't appear very extremely disturbed, no.
I don't.
Other than a box and a lampshade.
Right, because you didn't see things that were tipped over, you said. Those were your words, right?
Correct.
But, Ms. Eshman, obviously you've never been in the trailer before.
Correct.
Did you see Officer Virgilio and Detective Porter in the trailer around 5 o'clock?
No, I did not.
So you've not been in the trailer before, so would it be a fair statement to say you didn't know what was and wasn't there, or what was and wasn't standing up?
Yes.
I mean, for example, this butterfly that was moved before the placard was put down, does that not look like something that's been disturbed, laying on the ground in the middle of the doorway between the living room and the kitchen?
Yes, however, we have done a further search. The photo you showed before was something that was there underneath that bag. So we had marked it. So we had already have searched a little bit. The search isn't just one big search. It starts off with, after my overall's done, we take a lower level search. So we're just kind of looking to see what's there. We're laying placards down, and then after that, I'm taking photographs. Then we're searching even deeper. So we may have moved that bag to search and found that item that was underneath there.
Okay. What was found underneath it?
Well, you showed me a photo prior, and there was a placard 16.
Okay, let me show you that photograph, Exhibit 16. I'm sorry, Exhibit 323. Is that the one I just showed you?
Yes.
And Exhibit 323 with placard 16 is showing what as a piece of evidence?
It's a part of a taser.
Now let me put my pen on it if I can. Is it at the end of my purple pen?
Yes.
Right next to the Folgers can?
Yes.
So I see. So you folks moved that butterfly down so that you could get it.
We may not have seen that in the initial search, and so the bag may have been moved during our search,
Sure.
and then we may have seen it. It may not have been, I'm not saying it was underneath, but we just may not have seen it.
Okay. Now, back to where I was in this disturbing, you're saying that the place didn't seem to be disturbed. Would you not agree with me that wherever this thing was, and we've seen it in about this area, in both photographs, this butterfly was in the doorway into the kitchen.
Yes.
It doesn't seem like a normal place for something like that. Fair statement?
Fair.
And therefore, it would be fair to say that that's an item that clearly was evidence of a disturbance, right?
Well, I don't know, like you said, I don't know what was there before, so it may have just been something laying on the ground. What I mean by disturbed is something knocked over. You know, I don't know what is on the ground before and
Right.
after.
Like Exhibit 82, which shows a couple things knocked over. This bottle right here, knocked over, right?
Yes.
So that's evidence of a disturbance to you.
Well, I don't know if it was knocked over or just laying like that.
And that's my point, ma'am.
Yes.
You hadn't been
I
in
don't
there
know.
before, so you don't really know what's normal in this trailer and what wasn't normal, correct?
Correct.
And you don't know what was disturbed and what wasn't disturbed, correct?
Correct.
And I could show you, for example, next to the deceased, next to the chair, was a table, Exhibit 94 is a table over here leaning against, with books on it, leaning against a basket that looks completely disturbed, does it not?
It looks knocked over.
Okay. And there were several items like that. Fair enough?
Fair enough.
Okay. Gentlemen. Now, you told us about the taser that was outside on the ground. I'll show you what's been marked as Exhibit 20. And this one was taken at 7:01:30 p.m., correct?
Correct.
And it shows, as you walk down the porch, if that officer was still there in the first photograph I showed you, you would have walked right kind of by him and taken this photograph up looking into the front door with it, right?
Right.
And all of this in here is all the water from the storm, right?
Yes.
So there was a period of time when there was a storm and it rained quite heavily.
Yes.
And it even blew water and bougainvillea blossoms and leaves in the front door onto that vinyl, correct?
It may have.
And as we get closer, well, let me show you this photo. This is Exhibit 29. This is the same at 7:02:51 p.m., correct?
Correct.
And this is another photograph of that front porch and all the water there and the taser laying there, correct?
Correct.
And then Exhibit 26, which was taken at 7:01:49, correct?
Correct.
Shows us looking into the front door where the taser is, right?
Yes.
And again, all the water. You can see water leading up to the taser and then around that mat right up to that purple lip on the door, right?
Yes.
And then this is Exhibit 23. Now, this one was taken much later, 11:47:26, correct?
Yes.
That's about 4.5 hours later, right?
Right.
And we now see the taser laying there with the placard and the water kind of seems to have evaporated, placard 4, right? and the water seems kind of evaporated or gone away, right?
Right.
But the mat was soaked, right?
I don't know.
And we show you exhibit 35, which is the threshold of the door. You can see the water and the blood pooling right there, right in there.
I don't see water.
You don't?
It could be. Oh, yeah, I see it now.
I'm sorry, we zoomed in on it.
Yes.
You can see it much better now, right?
I see liquid, yes.
Yes, ma'am. Right there at the threshold, right?
Right.
And then exhibit. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me go back to the 35. And we can also see those broken via leaves. And the flowers and the green.
Yes.
Just a second. There. That the water had flown in from the stone.
It may have.
And in fact, in Exhibit 40, taken at 709, we can see water and blood moving all the way up to underneath the bicycle, right?
I see blood. I don't know if I see water. I can't really see it in this photo.
Okay.
Maybe if you zoom in.
Yeah. Okay.
Also try to monitor behind her too.
I do see liquid.
The blood and liquid, correct?
Yes.
Well, you were there a long time. That was water from that storm, right?
It could have been.
Okay. I mean, we saw here's Exhibit 11. Taken at 3:03. No water, right?
Correct.
Now, you didn't leave. You were there during the storm, right?
Yes.
Okay.
In the Mac van most of the time.
And this is Exhibit 13, taken at 7 p.m. and 44 seconds. That's when you started up again, right?
Yes.
And we can clearly see all of this water underneath this porch here, right?
Yes.
That wasn't here in Exhibit 11 at 3 o'clock, right?
Right.
So when you say it could have been water, I mean, it was water, wasn't it then?
Well, I don't know how the water got into the entryway, so.
Well, the door was open when you got there, wasn't it?
Yes.
Standing wide open, correct?
Yes.
And so water went in and blew stuff in and washed in and washed out, very possibly, correct?
Possibly, yes.
Okay. And we do know that blood that would have been carried out with the water would have whoever blood's DNA, whoever blood that was. Now, let me start all over again. We do know that the water that would have washed out some of the blood in it would have had the DNA of the person's blood that belonged to that blood.
Objection.
Fair enough?
Row 702, 703.
Black foundation sustained.
Do you know whether or not a person's DNA is contained in blood?
Is it?
In blood, yes.
So, therefore, my statement would have been correct. Blood mixed in with the water washing out over that threshold onto that mat where the taser would have been carrying the DNA of that person's blood, correct?
That could happen.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Ma'am, one of the things that you were asked about was this photograph of an individual that was standing in front of the, it's exhibit number 7, in front of this trailer. Do you see that?
Yes.
During the time that you were standing there until you went in, do you have any idea what this individual did?
It was my thought that he was securing the
Not
safe.
your thought. Do you know from your own eyes to your brain what that individual was doing?
No.
Do you know whether or not he actually ever went inside the trailer during the time that he was posted there and sometime after you went in? Do you have any idea whether or not he went in?
No, I don't.
And that's not your job, is it? You were asked about this issue involving the bag. And that's exhibit number 58. You see this?
Yes.
Well, what's this right here?
The part of the taser that was collected.
It was part of the investigation, isn't it? Right?
Yes.
And you can see the straps here, can't you? Of this bag, right?
Yes.
As you take a look at, and then you see this corner of this bag. You see that? I'm calling it the upper right-hand corner. Do you see that?
Yes.
If we then take a look at exhibit 41, where's the upper right-hand corner, ma'am? Is it in the same position it was before or no?
No.
And is it resting against anything there?
That corner?
This corner, is it up against anything?
I don't know. It looks like it's an error.
Well, directly underneath this corner, is there something that you guys subsequently found?
Yes, that item.
And if you were going to photograph this item, could you have photographed it through that item that's sitting there, this bag?
No, we would have to move it.
And in order to get a photograph, right?
Yes.
You were asked about the water and coming in, that sort of thing. Do you remember being asked about that?
Yes.
And you were asked, well, did you know that the door was open? You were asked about that, right?
Yes.
Well, take a look at exhibit 41. Does that show us the door?
Yes.
Does that have any indication to you, to your eye, based on what you know, does that look whether that's water or not? Or does it look like it's just blood?
It looks like blood.
And does it appear to have any water on it? To you?
Not to me, but...
No, I'm asking to you. Does it look?
No.
You were also asked about DNA. Are you an expert in the DNA area?
No, I'm not.
Are you an expert into how DNA is transferred from one source to the other?
No, I'm not.
So, for example, you were asked about whether or not, if there was water, exhibit number 35, for example, whether or not that would affect the transfer or the carry of DNA. Do you remember that?
Yes.
With regard to this same area, is blood liquid?
Yes.
Is water liquid?
Yes.
Whether or not they have the same consistency, if somebody steps on water with the sole of their shoes, given your experience as in life, you know whether or not the sole may be wet.
Most likely, yes.
Well, and with regard to blood, again, this is with regard to the DNA question, if a person steps on blood, you know whether or not there might be a transfer of the blood onto the sole of those shoes.
Most likely, yes.
And do you know if there are any tests that can be performed to determine whether or not there's any blood underneath somebody's shoe?
Yes.
But you're not an expert in that area, right?
No, I'm not.
You're asked about exhibit number 94. With regard to this, whatever this item is here, do you see that?
Yes.
Is anything balanced on top of it?
Books?
Right. There's an item balanced on it, right?
Yes.
If something is knocked over, are things going to fall over?
Yes.
If I were to tip this sideways, would these items fall over?
Yes.
You see those items there in that photograph on the ground, or do you see them balanced?
They appear to be balanced.
And in that balanced position that you see them in, if any pressure were applied to them, again, based on your knowledge of the way things are, does it appear that it would take a lot of movement or a lot of force to knock that over?
I'm not sure how much force, but it looks like it could be knocked over.
And the water that we see here in exhibit number 26, is there a special exception that you know of? You were talking about a warrant and that you didn't go in, that says if it's raining, it's okay to go in without a warrant? Do you know anything about that, if that's the exception?
No.
So even if it's raining, can you walk in?
No, you can't.
And this right here, is that water or is that something else? This.
When you moved it down, I realized it's a mat, I think.
So is this wet or dry in through here?
Dry.
There are some spots though, right?
Lots of water, yes.
And if we take a look at exhibit number 23, that brings it into focus more, doesn't it?
Yes.
You do have a mat, and you see this area here, up there, what is that called?
The threshold of the door?
Is the threshold higher or lower than the cement?
It's higher.
And so, in regards to whether or not water got in, you don't know if water got in or not, right?
No, I don't know.
In terms of the condition of the house, the bougainvillea, you don't know, do you?
No, I don't.
But it did appear to you, when it was brought in, that there may be some water there, right?
Yes.
Well, to your eye, given the opinion that you gave, exhibit number 40, is it a lot of water or is it just more blood than water?
To me, it looks like more blood than water.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't have any other questions.
Hey, Ms. Etherin, be excused, Mr. Martinez.
Yes, sir.
Any objection, Mr. Marins?
No, Your Honor.
And you're excused, you're free to go or stay as you wish.
Thank you.
We don't have to. Okay, let's move you can go.
Jacob Thomas.
Jacob Thomas.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, have your name, sir?
Sit down. Let him sit down. Mr. Martinez.
Your name, sir?
Jacob Thomas,
Who do you work for?
City of Phoenix Crime Lab.
And what do you do for them?
I'm a forensic scientist.
As a forensic scientist, what are your day-to-day duties? And are they the same now as they were back in October of 2010?
Yes, they are the same as they are now, as they were back then. And I perform latent print processing on items of evidence, and I do forensic biology screening as well.
When you say that you do biological screening, what does that mean?
That means I look at items of evidence for biological material.
When you say that you look for it, is it the case that every time that you look at something, you're able to discern just with the naked eye whether or not there's some cellular material there?
No, you cannot discern whether there's cellular material or not. Not all biological material is visible by the eye.
So how is it that you go about looking for it or analyzing an item to attempt to determine whether or not you're actually going to screen for it?
We do a visual analysis, which involves a variety of different types of lights and lighting techniques. And then we use what's called a specialized light. It's a forensic light source. And it's kind of like a black light. And biological material has the potential to illuminate and give off a glow, basically, which will allow us to identify a possible source of biological material. Or in the extent of blood will actually do the opposite and will appear dark on some items of evidence as well.
And when you say that you screen, are you the person that actually does the so-called DNA testing, or is that somebody else?
That would be somebody else.
So are you a precursor step to that DNA testing?
Correct, yes.
And how is it that you go about doing this DNA screening? How do you collect the items that you may or may not see? Explain to me how you go about doing it.
It depends on the type of stain. If it's a visible stain, for instance, a red-brown staining on an item of evidence, we will use a wet swab to collect that red-brown. Well, let me back up a step. We'll actually test the item, the staining, in order to see if it indicates a possible presence of some sort of biological. So we have tests that will indicate the presence of possible blood. If that test indicates that it could be blood, then what we will do is we will use a sterile wet cotton swab and swab that area, and then we will actually cut a piece of it off based on how much staining that we have on the swab, and we will portion that into a microcentrifuge tube, is a small tube that the DNA analyst will use in order to further process the evidence for DNA.
I have exhibit number 258. Are you familiar with this item? Take a look at it.
Yes, I am familiar with this.
And you conduct this so-called screening for biological materials on that gun.
Yes, I did look at this gun for biological material.
Why don't you go ahead and open it so you can tell us what it is that you did with regards to where you swiped.
You want me to take the evidence out? May I put gloves on?
They're right there to your left.
Perfect. I collected a variety of swabs off the gun. I collected a wet-dry swab from inside the barrel.
Why a wet-dry swab from inside the barrel?
Wet-dry swabs are used to collect what is known as touch DNA, which is DNA that is left from skin cells on an item of object after somebody's touched it. That's our normal technique that we use to collect touch DNA.
Okay.
So I collected this wet-dry swab from the inside of the barrel, from the face of the muzzle, approximately 1 centimeter onto the frame here, and then I collected a swab from the top of the slide and underneath this area, and then I collected a set of swabs from the normal contact areas, which would be the normal way you would hold it. So it would be this textured area here, the grip area, and the trigger, and inside the trigger guard.
I wasn't sure that with regard to the muzzle portion, show me where it is that you conducted your screening test. Just show me again where it was. Was it the muzzle? Was it around the muzzle?
It was, if this were to be flush with the barrel, the front face of the actual frame.
You keep saying if this were flush with the barrel. That's what I'm trying to get at. What is it that you're trying to tell me when you say that? Because when you conducted the test, was the gun in the condition that you have it now?
No, it was not.
So explain to me what it is that you were trying to tell us before.
That this would have been forward, and I would have looked at the entirety, or I would have swabbed the entirety of the front surface of this area here.
You want to get the gun in the position he was in when he tested?
Right, exactly.
Do you know how to do that?
Sure, I got to cut the tie.
I don't know if that's
I think it'll work.
good enough.
Okay. Now it looks a little bit different than it did before, correct? Correct. So tell us now what it was that you swabbed as the gun is presented to you now with regard to the muzzle area.
So the face of this entire area that I'm touching with my finger is what I swabbed in regards to the muzzle area.
Okay.
Along with 1 centimeter onto the front of the muzzle as well. So as well as that area.
But you definitely did the front muzzle area.
Correct.
All right. Did you also have occasion to work with the exhibit number 267?
Yes, I did.
And it's a gun belt, right?
Correct.
Why don't you go ahead and open it and show us what you swabbed?
Is it not open already?
It may be.
May I stand?
Yeah.
Yes.
So the areas that I swabbed, regards to the gun belt, I swabbed the exterior of the holster, along with, as if the gun, sorry. So the exterior of the holster and just to the left of the holster as I'm holding it.
Okay. Anything else?
And then the inside of the holster.
And those are the areas that you swabbed. Correct. You don't mind putting it back. I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
Mearns?
No question.
May Mr. Thomas be excused? Mr. Martinez?
Yes.
Any objection, Mr. Mearns?
No objection.
You're excused before you go on stage, you wish.
Thank you. State called Spera Bitsa Ray.
Oh, get Mr. Thomas back. No. No. Okay, never mind. Mr. Martinez, while your next witness is being sworn, why don't you pick up the question? I'll talk to counsel, see what we've got the question covered.
Mr. Rankin, you do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Yeah.
Martinez, you may call your next witness, Mr. Martinez.
State call, Sarah Bitzer. Your name, please?
Sarah Bitzer.
And where do you work?
I'm a forensic scientist in the Forensic Biology Unit of the City of Phoenix Police Department Crime Lab.
What do you do for them?
I work in our forensic biology section as a screener. So in my job capacity, I look at items of evidence and locate, identify, and collect any possible biological material on items.
You know somebody by the name of Jacob Thomas?
Yes, I do.
Does he work in the same unit as you do?
No, he does not.
Did you assist in the investigation involving a homicide down at 303 East South Mount Avenue, October 5th of 2010?
I analyze items of evidence.
With regard to the items of evidence that you analyzed, did you have occasion to see the shirt of the police officer that was involved?
Yes, I did.
And what is it that you did?
I examined that item looking for any possible blood that might be on that.
And how did you do that? How did you go about looking, for example, at the shirt to see if it had any blood on it?
I look at the item using standard lighting that's available to me, just like in here, in this room, using flashlights to get more direct lighting on an item. In this case, I also worked with another analyst by the name of Heather Fairchild, who did special types of photography that would help detect any possible blood.
And the photography in the sequence of events, where did it come? The beginning, the middle, or the end?
Heather Fairchild photographed that at the end.
So in terms of the shirt, and did you do the same thing with regard to the pants?
Yes.
And again, with regard to the pants, if you found something, what is it that you did?
When I located a possible stain of blood, I did what we refer to as the Kassemeyer test to see if it tested positive for possible blood. And then Heather Fairchild also would photograph those areas.
Let me show you the shirt, let me show you the pants, and then I'm also going to show you the boots. Let me see if I can find them. I want you to take a look at exhibit number 265.
Okay?
And you recognize this head?
Yes.
And what is it?
It is the black high-top boot, left boot.
And can you open it for me?
Yes.
Which shoe is this?
Sorry, this is the left boot.
And with regard to this shoe, what is it that you found? Or was it somebody else that found it?
No, I located possible blood on this boot.
And did you say that it's possible blood pursuant to the Kassemeyer test?
Yes.
And show me where on the boot you found the possible blood.
Okay, there were 3 or 4 stains on this side of the boot, and then 1 stain on the outside area of the boot.
Were there any stains on the sole of that boot?
The bottom of the boot was clean of any biological material.
Biological material is even more expansive or inclusive than blood, correct?
Correct.
And so when you said that, well, I asked you about blood, you said, well, it was clean of any biological material. How is it that you were able to determine that the bottom of that shoe did not have any biological material?
I did not see anything that resembled, not only was I looking for blood, but also that would be characteristic of tissue or things like that.
Did you conduct these other tests that you told us about, where you looked at it under different lights, and then the special photography on the bottom of or on the sole of that boot?
I looked at the bottom of this boot using different lights, yes.
And when you looked at the bottom of the boot, looking at it, were you able to see anything that you believed might be blood so that you would test it?
I did not see anything.
And had there been anything that had even the faintest resemblance to blood, would you have tested it?
Yes, I would have.
And in terms of, for example, let's take a look at exhibit number 40. You see that?
Yes, I do.
Assuming that this area here was blood, are you familiar with the term transfer of blood? Are you familiar with that term?
Yes.
What does that mean?
If there was blood, I was sitting here and I touched it and then moved over here and touched another area, I possibly have picked that blood up and transferred it to another location.
But if you touched it with the sole of the shoe there, would it be possible that it would be transferred onto the sole?
Yes.
And did you find any indication whatsoever of blood or biological material?
No, I did not find any possible blood on the bottom of that boot.
And the bottom of the boot, what is your definition of the sole of the shoe?
This, to me, the bottom of the boot would be the sole.
How about on the side? Is that considered the sole of the shoe?
I do not consider that the sole.
Go ahead and replace that. Take a look at exhibit 266. Go ahead.
You leave that open.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry.
Right.
266 is to the left there.
Okay.
And open it up and see if you have occasion to work with that.
We don't have the same bite that you guys do. Could you use the same gloves as okay.
Okay.
And which boot is this?
The right boot.
What is it that you did with regard to examination of that boot?
I looked at this boot just as I did the left boot, looking for any possible blood on this.
And on top of it, or the front part of it, did you find any indication of blood anywhere?
No, I did not.
How about on the sides anywhere?
No.
What you believe to be the sole, did you see anything there that indicated blood and or biological material?
No, I did not.
Had there been biological material, would you have collected it?
Yes, I would have.
How is that? If there is biological material there, would you also do the swabbing, or would you collect it in a different fashion?
I would have, in this situation, if there would have been possible blood, I would have done the Kaplan-Meier test. At that point, if it were positive, it would have been photographed by Heather Fairchild. And then if I needed to collect it, depending on what it is, so if it were possible blood, say, on this area of the boot, I would have swabbed it up. Sometimes if it's on a material like up in here, it might have to be cut out.
But in looking at that, did you find anything that necessitated cutting out or swabbing?
No.
You could put it back in the box. Take a look at exhibit number 261.
Okay.
And what is it? Did you have occasion to work with it?
Yes, I did. This is the short sleeve uniform shirt.
Go ahead and pull it up for me, please. You indicated that you undertook a certain procedure or a different procedure with regard to this clothing. What is it that you did with regard to this clothing to attempt to determine whether or not there was any blood on it?
I not only used my eyes and normal lighting and flashlights to locate any possible blood, but because of the fact that this is a dark material and blood is also dark, sometimes it can be hard to see visually without using special photography. So I worked with Heather Fairchild in a different unit who is trained in this special photography to help visualize where there might be any possible blood.
And so did she use the photography technique?
Yes.
And as a result of her technique, you're looking at it, you have a conclusion as to, or an opinion as to whether or not there was any blood on that shirt.
There was no visible staining consistent with blood on the shirt.
And is there anything there that was, in your estimation, something that needed to be tested?
No.
Go ahead and put that away, please. Take a look at exhibit number 260.
Would you like me to open it?
Please.
Sorry.
And this is an item that you worked with, right?
Yes, it is.
And with regard to the right pant leg, find any substance consistent with blood?
No, I did not.
How about the front area of the pants? Anything consistent with blood?
Front upper area, no, there's nothing.
How about the back area?
No.
And the back of the legs, anything consistent with blood?
No.
How about the left leg, the lower portion of it?
The front lower left leg, as you can see by the markings here, I found areas of possible blood.
The markings that are on there, did you put those on there, or did somebody else put those, or is it that the way that it appears when there is blood there?
No, I put those markings on there once I received a positive Kassemeyer test for the indication of blood as a way to be able to go back to this item at a later date and find those stains easily.
All right, if you don't mind holding it up for us again so we can see the height of it, please. And I do believe that you also have exhibit number either 265 or 266, which is the left leg.
Correct.
Can you pull that out, please? First of all, what item number is it? I'm sorry, exhibit number.
Yeah.
It would be the green tag there, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm just making sure I'm pulling out the left one and not the right one. Sorry. The left boot is exhibit number 265.
All right. If you don't mind holding your pants up, if you need me to hold the boot, I will. And drape the pants over the boot so that this goes in there.
Okay.
And this is what it would look like, correct?
Correct.
Now, if we have it like this, where were the other stains on the boot?
Sorry, side seam. There you go. So the stains on the boot were 4 in this region and then 1 outside.
And then you have the other ones in the pant.
Yes.
All right. Ma'am, I don't know if the handgun is still up there. If it isn't, I'd like to show it to you.
I don't see it.
There it is. The judge's hand. You don't mind not pointing it at anything other than Did you also have occasion to, let's do this, did you also have occasion to work with regard to that, perform any work with regard to that handgun?
No, I did not.
Did you check it in any way, shape, or form to see if it had any biological material on it?
I never had this item in my custody.
Okay. Was there an item that was taken from this gun that you ultimately determined was not biological, looked like wax?
Yes, there was.
And how was it that you came across that particular item?
There was an item that was collected and described as a brown flake from the side of the gun. So I received just that brown flake in a container.
And it was from the side of the gun, correct?
Correct.
That's how it was described. So you received this brown flake, and what is it that you do to determine whether or not it has blood on it?
I did a visual exam of this with the unaided eye, so just looking at it like I'm looking at you now, as well as looking at it underneath the stereo zoom, which is a type of microscope that will help me get a closer view and more detailed view of that item.
And after doing that, were you able to make a determination as to what that substance, whether that substance was biological or not?
It was not biological material.
When you say it wasn't biological, how were you able to determine that?
The characteristics of it did not resemble anything that I'm familiar with as being biological. It didn't have the characteristics of, say, skin, or there was no characteristics of blood. So since it did not have the visual characteristics, I deemed it not consistent with biological.
Did you also work with some swabs that were taken from, take a look at exhibit number 40, that were taken from this bicycle?
Yes.
And specifically, where were the swabs that were taken from the bicycle that you worked with?
I received a set of swabs from the top of the seat, as well as a set of swabs that was collected from the top of the middle bar.
So you received 2, actually.
Yes.
And did you receive a, yes, sir, or did you receive the third that may have involved the handlebars?
No.
So just 2?
Correct.
And since somebody has already seized them, what is it that you're doing with them? What is it that your function is with regard to those particular swabs from the seat and this bar?
I look at those swabs and do a visual examination. I tell what the staining looks like. This situation, there was a little bit of red-brown staining that appeared to be blood on those swabs, so I performed the Castlemeyer test to confirm that it was possibly blood. Then I cut the tips off of those swabs and put them into a small tube to be forwarded on for further DNA analysis.
Are you the person that actually did the DNA analysis in this case?
No, I am not.
And who's the person that does that?
Kathy Stoller did the DNA in this case.
But you're familiar. What is DNA, first of all? Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
What is DNA?
DNA is what makes us who we are. It's the building blocks of life. Each of us has a unique DNA profile unless we have an identical twin.
Is it a biological substance from the body?
Yes.
So, and this biological substance that comes from the body has in it this DNA, right?
Correct.
And this DNA can be analyzed, or the profile can be analyzed and compared, right?
Correct.
With regard to DNA, do you know whether or not extreme heat, such as that from the expanding gases that are present when there's the shooting of a gun, do you know whether or not that affects whether any biological material, i.e. DNA, that may be left behind.
Heat can degrade DNA.
When you say that it can degrade DNA and that heat can do that, is degrading the same thing as destroying for purposes of testing?
Yes.
So heat is one of the factors that will not allow you to perhaps get a result because heat has done something to it, right?
Correct.
Casings, is that something that's affected by this heat, just as an example?
Yes.
In this case, did you also have some bullets that you worked on?
Yes, I did.
Why is it that you're working on doing this work and then somebody else is doing DNA testing? It appears that it's somewhat of an unnecessary step. If we have a person that's going to do DNA testing, what is it that you do without anything pejorative about it as the middleman?
The City of Phoenix, that's the way our lab is set up. We have a side of the lab that does the screening, so locates, finds, collects, identifies. Then it's preserved and sent on to the DNA analyst. Some labs do it all as one, other labs do it in two separate units.
So what you're saying, I think, is that you're the person that actually prepares or fits the item that's ready for somebody else to do the test later on.
Correct. I get it prepared in little tubes and packaged for the DNA analyst.
Did you receive some buccal swabs from somebody by the name of Richard Chrisman?
Yes, I did.
And what did you do with those buccal swabs? The buccal swabs we've told is this saliva, but what is it that you did with regard to those?
The buccal swabs I received, I did a visual exam, notated the color of the staining on those swabs, and portioned half of one swab and put it into a tube to be used by our DNA analyst in the DNA process for comparisons.
Did you also receive the buccal swab of somebody named Sergio Virgilio?
Yes, I did.
And as part of this, did you receive a blot from the Office of the Medical Examiner in the name of somebody by the name of Daniel Hernandez?
Yes, I received a blood blot.
So what's the difference? Now you have, are they treated differently? You have blood on the one hand, you have saliva on the other. Are they treated differently or not?
Both can be used as a biological standard for an individual. I received a blood blot, so it says just a couple drops of blood on a piece of filter paper. So obviously there's no top of the swab for me to cut off. So I just cut out a very small portion of that filter paper and put it into a tube to be used.
Are you familiar with the term touch DNA?
Yes, I am.
What does that refer to?
Touch DNA is, there's this roll of tape here. So it's sitting here. If I were to pick it up and then set it back down, I have potentially left some of my biological material, my DNA, behind on this roll of tape.
And had you not been wearing gloves up?
Correct.
Or will gloves prevent the leaving of?
Yes.
In this case, did you have occasion to also work with exhibit number 217?
Yes.
Read for us what it says on the outside of the envelope so that we don't have to open it.
One fired bullet.
And on the left, there's an indication of a date on the upper left-hand corner. You see that?
December 8th, 10.
And then it has more information. Please give that to us.
It has our departmental report number, our invoice number, the item number, and then the individual.
What item number is it?
Sorry, the invoice number is 397-1026, item number 1.
And the person whose name is on there?
Mason.
Did you do anything with regard to that?
Yes, I did.
What did you do?
I looked at this both unaided eye with the stereo zoom, and then I swabbed this bullet as well to collect any possible biological material.
And that's number 1, and there's a date of December 8th on the front of it, right?
The date of impound is December 8th, yes.
And there's an item number 1 associated with it, right?
Yes.
Take a look at exhibit number 216. Did you also have occasion to work with that?
Yes, I did.
And if you could read the front of it, please.
Date of impound is October 11th of 10. There's our department number. our invoice number of 3955594. Item number 13, impounding individual is Mason.
And it is item number 13, though, right?
Correct.
Exhibit number 218.
Date of impound, October 11/10. Our department number, invoice number is 3955594. Item number 21, impound individual is Mason.
On this particular item, what is it that you did, number 21?
I looked at this item both with the unaided eye and the stereo zoom.
And were you able to find anything of interest, or did you just swab it?
I just looked at this. I did not see anything that was consistent with blood. I notated possible other trace fibers, wood paneling, and packaged it and forwarded on to another area of the lab. I did not swab this item.
In terms of your experience, is DNA something that you always have to see, or is it something that you can just swab? Sometimes it's there, sometimes it isn't.
Correct. It's not always visible.
Exhibit number 221. You have occasion to work with this. Somebody just told us they swabbed it, but did you have anything to do with the swabs associated from the taser?
I did not receive the taser. I received swabs that another individual had collected from this taser.
And what did you do with the swabs?
I did a visual exam, described the color on those swabs. I cut off the tips of those swabs and put them into a tube to be forwarded for DNA.
And how about exhibit number 222? Well, with regard to the exhibit that you have in front of you, what's the exhibit number?
Exhibit number 221.
Why don't you read for me the description that it has on the front page, upper left-hand corner?
Upper left-hand corner is the date, 10/09/10, our department number, and then it says Officer R. Chrisman. Invoice number 3955112, item 7, and then impounding individual is Cisneros.
Exhibit number 222. What did you do with regard to this? Or any swabs?
Same situation. I did not receive this actual taser. I received swabs that another individual collected from this. In a similar manner, I received those swabs, did a visual exam of them, cut the tips off, put them into a tube to be forwarded for DNA.
On the front there, it has the name. Can you read that for me?
Yeah.
Get the letter B as in Victor.
Virgillo.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask you about telling us about what you did with the pants and the shirt and the boots. This Fairchild testified last week. My understanding was that you and she would look at these items visually and determine whether or not you could find any blood. And if you found something you thought might have been blood, you would perform a Kasselmeyer or whatever that test on it. And then she would take this special type of photography. Is that how it worked?
Yes.
That's all. Thanks.
Redirect? Ms. Bitzeray be excused.
Yes.
Any objection? Daniel?
This here? Okay.
Okay, thank you. Excuse, you're free to go or stay as you wish. Mr. Martinez?
State calls Kathleen Stoller.
All right. Let's set up, why don't we take the afternoon break a little bit early, and then we'll reorganize the exhibits. Let's do the math. 255. We'll take a break till 2:55. Please remember the admonition. Keep an open mind. Don't discuss the case. We'll see everybody at 2:55. Jurors are excused. Mr. Martinez, not as a question of your mental impressions, but from the perspective of the statement of the witness. If Ms. Stoller is asked the question, what conclusion did she draw from any examination of the gun barrel, what do you expect her mouth to say?
The end of the muzzle, she'll indicate it's a partial mix.
Period, or also no conclusion?
She will say that she cannot make any conclusions as to who it is, or whose profile it fits.
Anything for the record for now, Mr. Martinez?
No.
Mr. Merritz?
That's all she's going to say.
We'll see everybody at 2:54.